How do you go from making $30 million a day, every single day, to the walls closing in and the U.S. Treasury seizing $14 billion in Bitcoin, which is the largest cryptocurrency seizure in current history? And also, the United Kingdom takes 19 of your properties in London. Not only that, but Singapore has taken over $100 million of your assets. And Taiwan has taken 26 of your luxury cars, your Ferrari, your Bugatti, and your Porsche. Hong Kong has frozen $353 million of your cash and stocks. Simultaneously, your assets are being seized across 4 different continents. This is the story of Chen Zhi. Chen Zhi was born on December 16th, 1987, in the Fujian province of southeastern China. Fujian is known as a hub of entrepreneurship and business ambition. Not much is known about Chen's early life, but we do know that he wasn't born into wealth or political connections. His first venture was an internet cafe, and he also owned a few gaming centers. They were successful, but they were still pretty modest operations. Somewhere around 2010 or 2011, he made a decision that he would change his entire trajectory. He decided to leave China and move to Cambodia. Most people wouldn't have seen this move as some sort of upward advancement. Cambodia in 2011 wasn't exactly a hotbed of economic activity. It was a developing nation trying to rebuild after decades of conflict and instability. Cambodia in the 2010s was a country about to experience a transformation unlike anything in its recent history. And that transformation was being driven in large part by Chinese capital. China's economy was booming, but Chinese real estate was becoming really expensive. Speculators had driven up the property prices to levels that made building a new development extremely costly. Meanwhile, there was this massive wave of Chinese economic expansion happening under Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese companies were getting government support to invest in infrastructure and development all across Asia and parts of Africa and other parts of the world. At the same time, Cambodia had something China needed, which is cheap land, weak regulation, and an appetite for foreign investment. The Cambodian government, under its leader Hun Sen, began making huge tracts of land available for politically connected developers. Now, much of this land had been taken from ordinary Cambodians, but that's another conversation. Chinese developers and Chinese investors really started to pour a bunch of capital into Cambodia around this time. And with that capital came tourism. Chinese tourists started visiting Cambodia in massive numbers. They came for the temples, yes, but they also came for something else: gambling. Gambling is illegal in mainland China, but in Cambodia, it's completely free and open. So a whole new industry began to boom. If you want to see just how crazy the transformation in Cambodia happened during this time, you can just look at this seaside resort town called Sihanoukville, Cambodia. A decade earlier, it was just a quiet, sleepy fishing village, the kind of place backpackers went to relax and hang out for a few weeks and drink on the beach and stuff. But then the casinos came, and with the casinos, luxury hotels, and with the hotels, high-rise apartments on just about every block. The skyline changed almost overnight. Sihanoukville went from being a quiet beach town to looking like a mini Las Vegas transplanted in the middle of Cambodia. Everywhere you looked was new construction. Everywhere you looked was signs in Chinese. And on every corner, there was Chinese restaurants. It was all this Chinese money causing this transformation. The dramatic change is really extraordinary. And parts of it is almost chaotic looking. But it was all majorly profitable for a certain group of people. And right at the beginning of this economic boom and major change in Cambodia, Chen Zhi arrived. And almost immediately, he started making moves. Chen Zhi started making real estate investments in Cambodia as soon as he landed. But where he got this money from is a little murky. Investigators have been asking this question for years. According to some sources, Chen claims that he had an uncle that gave him $2 million to start his first property company back in 2011. There's no evidence to prove that this backing came from him, but that's what we have. In 2014, Chen became a Cambodian citizen. He got his citizenship through a process that required a minimum donation to the government of $250,000. Now, as a Cambodian citizen, Chen could buy land in his own name. This gave him leverage and control that he hadn't had before. In 2015, Chen was just 27 years old when he founded the Prince Group. It started out as a property development company, but very quickly it became something much, much larger. The expansion of the Prince Group over the next 5 years was nothing short of explosive. In 2018, he obtained a commercial banking license and established the Prince Bank. He also started Cambodia's third airline. He built luxury shopping malls in the capital Cambodia, 5-star hotels, and he launched an enormous project called the Bay of Lights. It was a planned $16 billion eco-city near Sihanoukville that was supposed to showcase Cambodia's future. So over the span of some years, he built a bank, an airline, luxury hotels, and began the build out of an entire new city. All of these projects and investments into the country of Cambodia came with prestige and, of course, political connections. So by the early 2020s, Chen Zhi wasn't just a businessman. He was one of the most politically connected figures in Cambodia. Chen's image and the image of his company, Prince Group, was carefully cultivated. Through his company, he donated $14 million to different charities. And during the COVID pandemic, he donated millions of dollars to help the country get through that situation. To anyone looking at Chen Zhi from the outside, he looked exactly what he claimed to be, a respected entrepreneur and a genuine philanthropist. People who worked directly with Chen described him as being courteous. He was cool, calm, collected. He was measured. He had a quiet charisma. He wasn't the kind of person seeking tabloid coverage. He was subtle, strategic, and he kept a very low profile. And when you think about it, this is smart. It's really smart, actually, because by keeping a low profile, you stay off of law enforcement's radar. So for a while, the gambling boom in Sihanoukville seemed like it could go on forever. The Chinese tourists kept on coming, and the casinos kept on growing. But around 2019, things started to change. Chinese organized crime groups had moved into Sihanoukville. And when you have a bunch of different criminal organizations in one place, all competing for territory and profits, you start to see violence. Turf wars, gangs fighting each other over control over the gambling and crime business. Tourists started to stay away. And what used to be described as a vacation destination for Chinese is now being called a criminal hub. China was concerned about its citizens getting involved in crime overseas. So under massive pressure from China, the Cambodian government made a dramatic move. In August 2019, the Prime Minister Hun Sen banned gambling entirely. The effect was pretty much catastrophic for Sihanoukville's economy. Around 450,000 Chinese workers and business people packed up and left the city. The main industry that had driven this economic boom in the area collapsed almost overnight. All the residential developments stopped. Unfinished buildings sat empty. Now there's ghost towns with high-rise apartments with no one left to fill them. For most businesses and entrepreneurs, this would have been a disaster. It was time for them to pivot or go under. But Chen Zhi didn't go under. In fact, he kept spending and he kept expanding. Right when the gambling industry was collapsing, Chen Zhi purchased a $12 million mansion in North London. And a few years later, his company bought a $95 million office block in London's financial district. His company started to purchase properties in New York. They bought private jets. They bought super yachts. They even bought a Picasso painting. So the question that jumps out immediately is, where's all this money coming from? If your company's main business is luxury hotels and casinos, and that business has been decimated, how are you not affected? The United States and the United Kingdom had an answer. They say it's coming from online fraud, massive industrial scale fraud. And they say it's been this way for years. According to the federal authorities, they say that when the gambling industry in Cambodia started to decline, something else began to take its place. Scam centers. Massive, organized, international scamming operations. If you can imagine a compound somewhere in Cambodia with high walls, barbed wire, and inside there's dormitories packed with people, hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them. These people didn't come voluntarily. These are trafficked people. They were tricked, they were promised legitimate jobs, and then held captive. And then they were forced to do scams. They were made to target victims all over the world with sextortion schemes, romance scams, and investment frauds. And there's many of these compounds, each one bringing in millions of dollars. Collectively, they're bringing in billions of dollars. According to the U.S. indictment, the Prince Group operated at least 10 of these compounds. One of the most notorious of them was a place called Gold Fortune Science and Technology Park. At Golden Fortune and the other compounds, workers who tried to escape were beaten brutally. There's around 300 scamming compounds operating across Cambodia, with a total workforce of over 200,000 people. And this is the conservative number. Estimates suggest that 60% of Cambodia's GDP comes from cybercrime. Cambodia is becoming what analysts are describing as a scam state, a nation where the main economic activity is organized fraud on an international scale. Civil society in Cambodia has been decimated. Anyone who goes and reports on this issue is now silenced. In other words, the government is on board and there's no one being held accountable. Voices of the opposition are silenced, and this means that the scam economy will continue to grow unchecked. The Cambodian government has denied any wrongdoing or complicity. A spokesperson for the Interior Ministry told the Associated Press, "We do not protect individuals who violate the law." The Cambodian government has also said that it's committed to preventing and suppressing all forms of cross-border crimes, particularly online scams. And to be fair, there has been some efforts. Earlier this year, Prime Minister Hun Manet established a commission specifically tasked with targeting scammers. The government claims that it has arrested 3,455 suspects, all from 20 different nationalities accused of cybercrime in Cambodia. They say that they've broken up several organized crime and trafficking networks and that they've rescued many trafficking victims. But these individual arrests and crackdowns don't address the real fundamental problem. They don't address the fact that a significant portion of Cambodia's GDP is coming from criminal activity. It's essentially performative in nature. They're arresting individual small-time scammers, but protecting the elite who profit from the system. So Singapore taking Chen Zhi's yacht and his Ferrari being seized in Taiwan and all of the properties across the UK and New York. And when $350 million in cash and stocks is taken in Hong Kong, it sends a very strong message that clearly says, we're coming for you. Your assets are no longer safe and your connections won't protect you. I think it's important to zoom out and talk about what's happening beyond Chen Zhi and Cambodia. Because while Chen Zhi's operation was extraordinary in its scale and sophistication, it's not unique. The online scam industry has become one of the most profitable criminal enterprises in the world today. The United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime estimated that the global scam industry is worth between $50 and $70 billion annually. And it's growing. Southeast Asia has become the epicenter of this industry. Why? Well, for several reasons. First, there are large populations of unemployed and underemployed workers who are vulnerable to trafficking and coercion. Second, there's weak government regulation and enforcement in many of these countries. Third, there's relatively easy ways of moving money across these borders through cryptocurrency and international banking systems. And the fourth, and this is the most important one, there's often complicity or at least indifference from government officials who are profiting so much from this system. It's easy to talk about these scams in the abstract. We talk about the billions of dollars and the hundreds of thousands of workers, international crime networks, shell companies, cryptocurrency wallets, and the luxury cars being seized. But behind every one of these statistics is a human being. This isn't a victimless crime. It's predatory, and it's happening on a global scale. So what happens now? Does the removal of Chen Zhi and the seizure of his assets actually matter? Will it slow down the scam economy? Probably not. Chen Zhi has vanished. He's in the wind. Billions of dollars worth of his assets have been seized, but how much does that really hurt someone that was making $30 million a day? If he had $14 billion spread across different accounts, how much more is out there?